Jim mentions Jensen, of course. Let's talk about the leader of the world's most valuable company. In just hours from now, Jensen Huang will deliver the keynote at NVIDIA GTC in Washington, D.C. The company says he'll outline a roadmap for how AI will reshape industries, infrastructure, the public sector. The watch is on to see what he might say about doing business in China. President in Tokyo this morning, Jim, said he'll meet with Jensen tomorrow.
I think this is all very significant, and the stock has been creeping up. I think that, there was some savage article that I read, I guess, in the Times about how all the president's doing is getting back to where it was, and the whole thing with China has been a big mess. I don't know. I think that if you can get NVIDIA in there, and I do believe they'll be in there, and they have to write on NVIDIA, we know there's a $50 billion market out there. They right now have no China in it. This stock is up. Now, we have Lisa Su on, and we have to ask Lisa, was that a competitive deal that was made with the DOE? Because I got to tell you, yesterday, look, Qualcomm is a press release company. I'm not buying that at all. I'm with Citi. But Lisa Su, I thought that deal would have gone to NVIDIA. We got to find out. It's just number one question. Was that a competitive deal? What do you think? We'll find out.
I don't know. I'm happy that Lisa will be joining us so we can ask.
Good.
Yeah, okay, it does sound like, though, like your China hawk feathers are molting a little bit. If you want NVIDIA back in there?
I am with the globalists. I'm now with the globalists on this, and they hate me. They just hate me.
You're a free trader, like Reagan.
No, just
what the heck are you? My mother, my sister. What's going on with you?
No, this is not Chinatown, Jake. Listen to me. What happened here is that I believe that it's not globalist to have the Chinese right on our platform. We get them hooked. It's exactly what. Every time, David, we want to get out, we got to get pulled right back in with them.
Every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
This is a really important deal because you get a lot of people who...
Wait, what's the important deal? Which one?
Okay, so right now China's trying to figure out whether they should write on a Huawei second-rate platform.
Yeah.
Or should they just say, okay, look, it just turns out that the U.S., Jensen Huang is a better platform. Let's make them. And then I don't want to say we own them because it's China and you can't own them.
They may decide that it's in their best interest, regardless of the underperformance of those chips, to stay on that platform. And by the way, they have a lot more power of the Huawei chips.
Yeah, there's a second-rate chips.
And then they can get a lot more power to come to bear. So maybe they can make up for it by having more literal electricity, powering these things.
We're recommissioning plants that we scuttled.
I'm aware, but they built more nuclear in 1 year than we built, and I don't even know how long. They built more solar than the world's ever seen.
In just under half an hour at the company's first ever GTC conference in Washington, our Christina Partsenevelos already caught him live from the conference for today's Tech Check. Morning, KP.
Hi, Carl. It's been very busy, and this is the fourth GTC here, and I definitely have to say the crowd is big, except a lot of them are just wearing more suits than what we've seen in the past. But the big question is, why the heck are we all in D.C.? Jensen answered that question maybe about 20 minutes or so on stage. He thought President Trump would actually be in attendance here, but as we know, the president has some other conversations happening in Korea and got pulled away to discuss what's going on with China. The event, though, is merging not only policy leaders. I spoke to members of the military, CEOs, and people that aren't even aware of what tokenization and AI means. This is all about building massive AI infrastructure. That is the constant theme here. Where are we going to generate the power, the red tape that is involved with all of that, and how they're going to mitigate that. And one of the most important aspects, too, especially relevant to our network today, given all the other news with Amazon and Chegg, how our general population is not going to be displaced because of AI efficiencies. People don't want to hear that their job is going to be cut. So I asked Jensen just that. Here are his comments.
We have labor shortages all over the world. If we had more workers, companies would make more money. If we were more productive, companies would make more money. When we make more money, we invest more money so that we hire more people. And so it's very likely that the companies that use AI first, that use robotics technology first, will be the most successful first, and they will end up hiring more people. You're going to lose your jobs not to a robot. You're going to lose your jobs to somebody who uses a robot. You're going to lose your jobs to somebody who uses AI.
And as part of NVIDIA's lead up to Jensen's keynote, a topic that has come up again and again and again on these pregame panels has been powering AI and how to secure the energy needed to actually run their data centers. I was able to speak to Mike Intractor, the CEO of CoreWeave, about his company's power needs, because that constantly comes up when they're promising to build out, 1, 2, 3 megawatts of power across the country. How are they going to get the power? Listen to his comments.
There are power constraints that will emerge and continue to emerge as you continue to build out this infrastructure, for sure. And the market is beginning to really allocate significant resources to ensuring that the infrastructure continues to get built, so that we're able to power the AI data centers that are required over time.
And so we're waiting for more news to come from the keynote, which is shortly. But one of the companies I want to mention right now is Nokia, because Nokia shares had been halted because of news that, yes, has been confirmed, a $1 billion investment from NVIDIA into Nokia. We can assume that this has to do with 5G, 6G technology. More of these details will come through in the keynote, but you can see shares now up, not even 2% at the moment, but the news just hit the wire. And so that is a little takeaway. We're expecting a few more. Maybe if you read it off the panels, quantum's in there, maybe more about telecom, but those are some of the focuses along with power. So Carl, back over to you.
Yeah, Christina, I think the other interesting element about it being in D.C. is that Jensen has had to become kind of a politician, right? He's having to reassure the China hawks on China. He's having to reassure the markets on circular revenue, and now he's having to reassure the public on their job.
I know Jensen definitely takes the top spot and being able to mitigate all of these rules, but it's a lot of tech CEOs in this day and age. That's why so many of them have larger offices in D.C., specifically relating to China. I know some sell-side research was anticipating maybe some comments around China. Will that revenue come back? Will the government provide the green light? We know that NVIDIA went from a huge portion of their sales going to China to now practically zero because of all the export controls. My assumption is that today we probably will not hear anything about, any licenses being granted for other Blackwell iterations, because he doesn't want to front-run the conversations that the president is having with President Xi. So that is just something to keep in mind if people are trading on GTC solely for maybe the China market reopening. But yeah, to your point, Carl, 100%. He has to wear many, many hats. And Carl, last year I asked Jensen, did you get an invite to Mar-a-Lago? And he said he never got an invite. And now we know that if he can just text the president of the United States and say, don't go into San Francisco, we can tell that his lobbying efforts have really changed over the last little while. Scott, so he is taking the stage. He's going to be announcing a few partnerships throughout the next 2 hours or so. But we know one of the bits of news that already came out is the investment in Nokia. That would be a $1 billion investment. They are specifically working on their 5G and 6G software that would be running on NVIDIA chips. We saw the stock price halted, then it was up about 17%. Nokia going to be issuing 166 million shares. In regards to what I heard from the conversations on the floor here, I spoke to many CEOs from Cadence, Perplexity, CoreWeave. Power is definitely a theme, and everyone, this is a tech event, so you can imagine that everyone is going to be incredibly bullish, especially the CEOs of said companies. But they seem to think that things are going to improve and that the administration is going to administer some type of deal to get the snowball going to build out this infrastructure. And the same theory can apply to China conversation. So we know Jensen Huang is even going to Korea right after this. I don't know, literally right after he's jumping on a plane, but he's going over there. And the outcome is that there could be some positive momentum for these chip stocks, specifically AMD as well as NVIDIA. The fact that they could be granted opportunities to continue shipping to China. I'm not sure yet just which iteration for NVIDIA, for example, but CJ Muse, one chip analyst from Cantor Fitzgerald, I was just talking to him, and he says that's not priced into the market just yet, that the China market would reopen for both AMD and NVIDIA.
Joining us now is Vivek Arya from Bank of America. It's great to have you back on, and let's start right there, because it was another gangbusters day overall for the semi sector. How much further can AI drive this?
Thanks, Morgan. I think that this thing can go on for at least another year to 2 years, and perhaps even till 2030. And the reason is that most infrastructure cycles, they tend to last for a decade plus. We have seen this with 3G and 4G. We have the 5G cycle that started. So these cycles can last for a decade or more. And if you look at when ChatGPT started, that was in late 22. So we are just basically in the first 3 years of what could be a decade-long cycle. Now, it's important to understand why this is happening. And I think why this is happening is that there is this virtuous kind of flywheel that we have where there's infrastructure spending that is leading to the creation of intelligence, which is being monetized, which is then being fed right back into the deployment of more infrastructure. And I think semiconductors are absolutely in the middle of a lot of those very, very important building blocks.
So whether it's AMD and their news with the Department of Energy today and some of the other deals they've struck recently, or NVIDIA, which I think closed up almost 5% today and obviously had a flurry of announcements out of its conference in Washington. Are these still the places that investors should be parking their money?
Yeah, in fact, I'm at NVIDIA's show here at GTC. Very incredible presentation, as is to be expected from their CEO. And I think he laid out a path to almost $500 billion of demand that they are seeing between calendar 25 and 26. And I think what's really important to understand is how leverageable this technology is in so many areas of what people refer to as the real economy. This is industrial, this is healthcare, this is cybersecurity, this is defense. This is automation. This is automotive. So this is not just high performance computing in isolation. This is actually has the potential to create productivity benefits in vast areas of the economy. So now I think it's NVIDIA. I think it's Broadcom. It's AMD. I think these are just exceptionally positioned companies in this environment.
What do you think of some of the deals and some of the investments that Jensen Huang at NVIDIA has been making?
Yeah, I think some of these investments, it's important to realize that there is a vast amount of infrastructure that is being deployed by very profitable companies, right? These are the large public hyperscalers. If you look at the amount of capex they are investing, it's only about 2/3 of their operating cash flow. So they can very well afford to invest in this infrastructure on their own. But there is an emerging group of companies, whether it is OpenAI, right, or others, who are investing at a much, much rapid pace. They do need more support from the ecosystem. And I think that will have long-term benefits because these companies can, as they say, kind of break things and move things forward at a pace, which is going to have a really stimulative and flywheel effect on the rest of the industry. But if you look over the next 5 to 6 years, I think whether it's NVIDIA's investments or AMD's investments, they're probably going to be less than 10% of the overall investment. So I think there's a lot of headlines that go after just that 10% part. But no, this infrastructure build is really being promoted by some of the most profitable companies on the planet right now.
Yeah, very quickly, M&A in the sector, we're going to get more of it, especially given some of the reports we got today with Qorvo and Skyworks?
I think what you're actually seeing, Morgan, is that it is the kind of the weaker parts of the semiconductor industry that have to do with consumer or smartphones, right? Industrial, automotive, those are sectors that are not doing as well. When you look at AI, yes, it's a sector that requires a lot of, entry barriers are quite high. But we do have really strong companies. So I don't anticipate as much in the AI and the data center part, but in other parts of semiconductors where I think things are not going as well, yeah, we could see some more consolidation.
Okay. We start off with that monster move in NVIDIA today. The semi-giant getting even more giant, pulling within a stone's throw of the $5 trillion mark. The stock jumping nearly 5% and adding more than $230 billion to its market cap just today. That is nearly one whole Goldman Sachs. And the move coming as NVIDIA hosts its second GPU technology conference of the year, where it announced partnerships with companies from Nokia, CrowdStrike, and Palantir to Lowe's and Uber. CNBC's Christina Parts-Nevelis spoke with NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang this afternoon. She joins us from the conference in D.C. Christina.
Melissa, can you believe that I was talking to a chip analyst who said, how long is it going to take for NVIDIA to hit $6 trillion? We're actually even talking about $6 trillion, given $5 trillion is around the corner. We really saw NVIDIA shares going into this event, GTC, just up marginally, not even 0.5%, but inch closer and closer to $5 trillion, really moving higher at the end of the keynote after Jensen did say, quote, or I should say cumulative demand for Blackwell and Rubin chips have reached $500 billion in orders through calendar 2026. And that doesn't include their networking business. So that could be major upside to street numbers that doesn't necessarily even include China. So that $500 billion in orders for Rubin and Blackwell, maybe we'll get China out of this trade talk deal. And so all of that is being taken as a really bullish sign that demand is moving ahead of expectations. Could also be a good sign for CapEx spend and a read on hyperscalers moving into the numbers just on Thursday. NVIDIA, like you said, announced many partnerships. Uber, Department of Energy, they're building 7 supercomputers, CrowdStrike, Nokia. I was able to catch up with, like you said, the CEOs of NVIDIA and Palantir to discuss their partnership and how it's going to move just beyond data analytics and chatbot answers and towards real business decisions that can be made with or without AI. And of course, that's scary to think about. Here's their answer.
What's very, very special, I believe, about our partnership is we're going to be able to move 2x, and I think in the future even faster. So you get a much, much faster, and actually because you can control it in a more granular way, much faster, much cheaper. And then the macro thing that I'm actually most excited about, which for our country is, because of that, you can do manufacturing in America.
So they're working together. The example they gave is Lowe's, for example, that you would create a digital replica of your entire business working environment, and the AI systems can make decisions on behalf of you. And that seems to be the way that we're going with agentic AI and individuals, making decisions based off of me, and then the same thing within the business world. But I think the major takeaway is that demand is really outpacing supply at the moment, hence that $500 billion number. And then also the positive comments around China, even though the talks haven't really happened. It seems like even the Department of Energy secretary was saying that he feels very optimistic. And that was a quote just moments ago with journalists. So perhaps they're alluding to something we don't know just yet, but it could be positive read for a lot of tech names going into the end of the week.
Right. And Jensen Huang has really been playing into President Trump's, goals here. I mean, he moved the whole conference to DC, correct? With the hope that the president would actually join. Obviously, the president is already occupied.
2 big things to that. He ended his GTC speech with "Make America Great Again." And then he ran up. So there was a lot of candid moments with him on the floor here. And he did say when he was with the panelists that he had GTC here in D.C. with the hopes that President Trump would be here. But President Trump obviously is busy, with the China trade talks. But Jensen Huang, he is going on a plane. He is heading to Korea. He wouldn't share any details as to which Korean leaders he'll be speaking with. There are some reports from Bloomberg that possibly there's going to be a new deal with Samsung. So perhaps we'll be getting more information. But they're very, very confident. And there's been a lot of, chats about how great the president is, how great the administration is, and really bringing back jobs here and building out infrastructure. And they're going to get rid of the red tape when it comes to power. Even when I asked the questions about nuclear, building a reactor takes years and years. You can't just do it like that. So how are we going to get all of these megawatts capacity out there? And they seem to think that the White House and all of the officials are really going to get on board and move things up.
Yep. Christina, thank you. Christina Partsinevelos in Washington, D.C. for us. Jensen Huang is seemingly doing everything right. I mean, short of gifting President Trump a golden GPU, he is, courting the president in terms of echoing some of the sentiment that the administration has regarding manufacturing in America, et cetera, and then also making all these partnerships, which seems to be the way to put market cap onto your company these days. Ink a partnership and the rest will follow.
Well, he even referred to it as a virtuous cycle. And so at what is called, today was called unofficially the Super Bowl of AI. And, all the companies, whether it's Palantir, CrowdStrike, you name it, these are the companies that certainly will be part of it. And what we've already learned about NVIDIA over the last, call it 2 months, is that they really are an AI infrastructure company, and the way they are investing and where these deals have seemed somewhat circular in nature. Just getting to the numbers that we got, that the analyst community now is scrambling over and what it means for valuations, and a 4% move in NVIDIA is probably the bigger move we've seen in NVIDIA in a long time. If you read at least some of the analyst reports that I'm getting, what's been implied by this $500 billion or $500 billion number is a lot of the street was somewhere between Blackwell and Hopper somewhere around 350 to 400 at the higher end. So it means what we heard today is probably some increase of anywhere from 25 to 50% on what the street was expecting in terms of shipments between now and the end of 26. That's extraordinary. And NVIDIA's always been this story where we've all known it was extraordinary. It was just how much more extraordinary. I think today was more extraordinary.
100%, Tim's right. And you mentioned he has a fiduciary responsibility to his shareholders, and he's doing it extraordinarily well. So good for him. Making deals, currying favor, all those things. Problem I've had incorrectly has been, price to sales. Now, you said $5 trillion. Let's round up. I mean, this is a company now that's approaching 19 times revenue, which is a big number at this mature of a company, I think. But people will say it's a new paradigm that will grow into that revenue. We shall see. November 19th, with this market move, that's when we report. It's going to be a fascinating day.
Yeah, it's also interesting the clout that Jensen now is having. When the president threatened to send troops to San Francisco, Jensen was one of the CEOs that got him on the horn, and he stepped back from that. And so, we talk about this transactional nature that this administration has with business, and I think that's a great example of it. The one thing I'd say about NVIDIA, and Mel, you just said that, one way to add market cap to your company is do a deal with them. Well, Uber closed down in the day. Palantir actually was unchanged on the day. And at some point, it's not going to be that exciting to do a deal with them that's on the come in the future. And I think there's been hundreds of companies that NVIDIA has invested in over the last few years. And a lot of those investments have to do with these companies. That was the Uber deal of buying these chips. So when you get this $500 billion number, and this company is expected to do, let's say, $300 billion in sales next year, you have to start scratching your head a little bit whether we're getting a little too far over our skis. And then the other thing about this circular nature of all this investment, and then they buy the chips back, this is becoming very financialized. It used to be you sell a product, someone buys the product, they put it into work, they get a profit from it. If it goes really well, then they buy your next product, right? So you think about it now, a lot of the financings and all this stuff that's going on in and away from NVIDIA too, there is a lot tied into this one name right now that used to not be it. It was a single play on the build out of this theme, and then we had the hyperscalers. But now it's moving all over the place, and it's infected the markets, and there is risk to that. There is risk that people are saying $5 trillion is going to be $6 trillion really soon. And I just can't find anybody who thinks that there's some danger to this for the broad market, not just this name in particular.
Yeah, I have a hard time arguing with that point. You mentioned two terms.
As much as I'd like to.
Circular and financial engineering. And I do want to acknowledge that there is a fair amount of that going on. With that said, I think I view it through the opposite lens. The knock on NVIDIA coming in was that it was a hardware company, that it would be subject to cyclical nature and pullbacks. And what they've done, and it was somewhat self-serving likely, but what they essentially said was, listen, we want to push into China because we want the world building on our technology, American technology and NVIDIA's technology. And all they've done is essentially replicate that within the United States. They are now on the public and private side with this Palantir deal. They have backed Circle and the NeoCloud companies. There is no way to continue to build up without being on the CUDA stack, whether it be the individual chip. They have found a way to spread their tentacles, if you will, into all of the different facets of AI. And that is why I think that maybe the $5 or $6 trillion number might actually be too low. There seems to be no way to push forward into AI. And we were worried about what their role would be within agentic and inference AI. And now they've kind of leapfrogged themselves into a leadership position in that next wave. And so it is circular. And I want to acknowledge the risk that you're putting out there, but it essentially guarantees that they continue to be at this very center of this AI flywheel.
So Guy's argument about 19 times sales, you're not worried about that. You're not worried about valuation at this point. You think that NVIDIA has the lock on this.
You can't not be worried about valuation. I just think that can't be the only thing that cues your investment thesis. For one, it's still a 60% gross margin business. So like a price to sales number doesn't tell you the same from one company to another, depending on what their margin makeup is. I will acknowledge it. I think you can never get too far offside. You can't just be a bull and not acknowledge the risks that are there. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying that they have now laid out a plan for how they will grow into those revenue and and PE.
I mean, the price to sales multiple is what it is. I'm not sure even what the sales multiple is, and I'm not sure how far out we're calling for it. But the nice thing about NVIDIA is we do have benchmarks all along the way, and these next couple quarters of numbers, without necessarily having to go out into the black hole of infinity and the unknown, I think this is a company that's going to be trading probably inside 30 times on a PE basis, with a margin profile that still is extraordinary, with a growth profile that's extraordinary. You don't have to go out to, hey, what's this really going to be? Now, today we got numbers that, again, we don't know, but we'll probably in the next couple of days know whether these were through 26. We can now begin. And Guy's number may be absolutely right. I haven't done that math. He's much smarter at math than I am.
Well, I took math smarter.
At Georgetown.
Yeah, he took. I didn't know they had math at Georgetown, but other smart kids were taking it. So I'm less worried about the multiple, especially an earnings multiple for a company that right now has the ability and Bon, when you're saying this, I mean, they've ultimately inserted themselves into the middle of the industry, and whether they've gone from hardware to platform to software to all of it, they're in the middle.
I guess the bull case has been the right case, by the way, but it hinges on the fact that there's such a head start. The competition is not coming in a meaningful way, which is why they will enjoy the 74% margins, and not in perpetuity, but for a foreseeable future, and why that revenue number, they can grow into that valuation. Now, if competition does come, that obviously changes the entire narrative. And we've seen different times over the last year and a half where there have been glimpses of that. Obviously, nothing has taken hold. But at least in my history of just watching things, when you have margins it's like Amazon says, your margins are my opportunity, and somebody out there is looking at this.
All right, I hope you're all doing great today. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get to it. Before I talk about Jensen's keynote, I want to mention that Microsoft and OpenAI have reached an agreement regarding OpenAI's restructuring. I'll just mention a couple important points. After the recapitalization, Microsoft will own a 27% stake in OpenAI. And under the agreement, OpenAI has contracted to purchase an incremental $250 billion of Microsoft Azure services. That bodes well for companies like CoreWeave, Nebius, and Iron, as Microsoft is open to leasing capacity from other companies, and OpenAI is contracted to purchase $250 billion worth of Azure services. Now let's talk about NVIDIA. Jensen shared a lot of details and announcements during today's GTC keynote. I'm just going to rapid fire some key points and announcements that stuck out to me in no particular order. Today it was announced that NVIDIA has taken a $1 billion stake in Nokia. And Jensen announced NVIDIA's new ARC computer, which stands for Aerial RAN Computer. Nokia will deploy NVIDIA's technology, and together NVIDIA and Nokia will upgrade millions of base stations around the world to enable 6G and AI. NVIDIA now has new platforms for 6G. This is a big deal. We also got some important announcements regarding quantum computing today. NVIDIA is launching NVQLink. NVQLink directly connects quantum processors with NVIDIA GPUs. As NVLink connects CPUs with GPUs, NVQLink connects QPUs with GPUs. NVIDIA's GPUs will be used for quantum error correction, moving terabytes of data to and from quantum hardware the thousands of times every second needed for quantum error correction. At its heart is NVIDIA's CUDA-Q platform for quantum GPU computing. As a reminder, NVIDIA is working with just about everyone in the quantum industry on NVIDIA's CUDA-Q platform. Using NVQLink and CUDA-Q, researchers will be able to do more than just error correction. They will also be able to orchestrate quantum devices and AI supercomputers to run quantum GPU applications. Jensen told us that quantum computing will not replace classical systems, but that they will work together, fused into one accelerated quantum supercomputing platform. Jensen also announced today that NVIDIA has partnered with the Department of Energy to build 7 new AI supercomputers. Jensen also spoke about inference, saying that the amount of computation needed for inference is extraordinary. And while NVIDIA systems are great for training, they have also demonstrated that they are great at inference as well. Remember this the next time you hear someone talk about NVIDIA's dominance being threatened by growing inference demand. Jensen also spoke about the exponential growth in compute, adoption, and usage, saying that right now AI is in a virtuous cycle. The more compute you use, the smarter your models will become. The smarter your models become, the more people will use them. And more people using the models results in a need for more compute. In other words, multiple growth curves are compounding the need for more compute, including the growth of AI's usage and the growth of AI's improvement. Jensen also said that this last year, the AI industry turned a corner and that AI models are now smart enough that they are worthy of being paid for. And again, as AI's usefulness increases, so will the need for more compute. Jensen also emphasized that NVIDIA systems deliver the best total cost of ownership on the market. Grace Blackwell's performance per GPU is 10 times that of the H200. And while the Grace Blackwell NVL72 is the most expensive system, it has the lowest cost per token generated, meaning it provides the best total cost of ownership to customers and directly contributes to greater AI revenues and AI profits. As long as NVIDIA continues delivering performance increases and total cost of ownership improvements that are this good, their customers will continue investing heavily in NVIDIA's latest systems because the improvements directly impact those customers' top and bottom lines. Jensen also shared a very important business update with us today. Jensen told us that NVIDIA has visibility into more than $500 billion of cumulative Blackwell and early ramp Rubin revenue through calendar year 2026, more than 5x Hopper's lifetime revenue. This is how much business is on the books right now. I want to be clear in saying that this is cumulative revenue from both Blackwell and early ramps of Rubin over the course of both 2025 and 2026. $500 billion in cumulative revenue by the end of calendar year 2026 would be 5x the growth rate of Hopper. I also want to clarify this because there is some confusion online right now about the $500 billion figure. Online, some people are taking a quote from Jensen that he made in an interview with Bloomberg out of context. The interviewer asked Jensen if the $500 billion was for 6 financial quarters, and Jensen said, quote, 5 financial quarters. But again, this is cumulative revenue. Jensen is not saying that there will be $500 billion in revenue from Blackwell and Rubin just in the next 5 quarters. He's saying there will be $500 billion in cumulative revenue by the time we get to the end of that 5 quarters. I want to make sure we're all on the same page here because a lot of people online are getting it wrong. Take a look at the graphic Jensen used in his keynote, and let's walk through this step by step. NVIDIA has already shipped 6 million of the 20 million GPUs. Based on the height of the graph and the height of the $100 billion mark, we can infer that the 6 million GPU mark is around $150 billion worth of GPUs. That would be $25,000 per GPU. And based on the graphic, there's still 14 million GPUs yet to ship. At $25,000 per GPU, 14 million GPUs will be $350 billion. Add the $150 billion already shipped and the $350 billion yet to be shipped, and you get a total of $500 billion or $500 billion in cumulative revenue. I just want to make sure we all understand that Jensen is not saying there will be $500 billion in Blackwell and Rubin revenue in just 5 quarters. He's saying that those 5 quarters will bring the cumulative 2-year total up to $500 billion in cumulative revenue. This is also very clear looking at the graphic, which shows the $500 billion as being cumulative revenue over a 2-year period. And so Jensen is saying that NVIDIA has clear line of sight to $350 billion of Blackwell and Rubin revenue over the next 5 quarters. And that does not include networking revenue. That is very strong. Also, these numbers do not include any potential China revenue. Speaking of China, today it's being reported that the president said he will meet with Jensen on Wednesday. As a reminder, President Trump and President Xi of China are scheduled to meet with each other this Thursday. Let's see if we get any update on NVIDIA's China market access. I also wonder if NVIDIA chips may be involved in any potential trade deal between the 2 countries. We also learned some more details about Vera Rubin today. Rubin is still on track to launch in 2026. Jensen told us that NVIDIA is preparing Rubin to be in production this time next year, maybe slightly earlier. Jensen also announced a global robo-taxi ecosystem built on NVIDIA Drive Hyperion. NVIDIA has partnered with Uber to connect NVIDIA Drive Hyperion cars into a global robo-taxi network. So in the future, you'll be able to hail up one of these robo-taxi cars. This is a new computing platform for NVIDIA, and this is a big deal. Jensen mentioned many other things today as well, too many to mention in one video, and I'm still trying to process through everything that we learned today. But those are some of the key points that really stood out to me from today's keynote address. Now looking ahead to Wednesday, there is a lot happening. On Wednesday morning, we have a fireside chat between Jensen Huang and Google Cloud CEO starting at 9 a.m. Eastern. Jensen should also be meeting with the president on Wednesday, so let's see if we get any news out of that meeting. Then Wednesday afternoon, we have FOMC. I think just about everyone is expecting a 25 basis point rate cut, but let's see what Powell says about potential future rate cuts. And then Wednesday after market close, we have earnings from Alphabet, Meta, and Microsoft, followed by Amazon earnings this Thursday. Let's quickly address the 3 reporting on Wednesday. I expect Alphabet and Meta to either raise or reiterate their CapEx guidance. I would be shocked if Alphabet and Meta did not at the very least reiterate their CapEx guidance given the strong demand Google is seeing for their many AI tools and apps, as well as all of the recent news about Meta's AI push with announcements of multiple new data centers and data center deals. Microsoft CapEx guidance is much more nuanced, and I want to emphasize that it is very important to listen to Microsoft's earnings call in order to understand what is actually going on here. Since all 3 of these companies are reporting earnings at the same time, if I had to pick one earnings call to listen to, I would pick Microsoft's. Microsoft told us that CapEx in fiscal 2026 would grow at a lesser rate than it did in 2025. And Microsoft will shift its mix of CapEx spending away from the external costs of a data center, such as land utilities, etc., and shift their spending more towards short-lived assets inside the data center, such as CPUs and GPUs. Additionally, Microsoft CEO said earlier this year that Microsoft will be leasing a lot of capacity from other companies even into 2027 and 2028. And it's my understanding that that expense would not be included in CapEx, but would rather be part of Microsoft's OpEx. And so again, there's a lot of nuance when it comes comes to Microsoft's AI strategy. And so we need to listen into Microsoft's earnings call to understand what's really happening here. The earnings report alone will not tell us the full story. I continue to be bullish on NVIDIA long-term, and my conviction is even stronger after all that we learned from GTC today. NVIDIA continues to execute extremely well as they deliver compute to a world that is severely compute constrained in the face of extremely strong AI demand. We are at the very early stages of agentic AI being introduced to the general public, and I'm expecting a surge in compute demand fueled by agentic AI that extends well into 2026. Jensen seems to agree with this based on his commentary about agentic AI both on NVIDIA's last earnings call and during his GTC keynote. Agentic AI is going to fundamentally transform businesses and society. In addition to agentic AI, we are also in the very early stages of physical AI being introduced to the masses. There's a reason I keep talking about physical AI in these videos. NVIDIA is establishing themselves as the indispensable foundation of physical AI, and over 2 million developers are already building on the NVIDIA robotics stack. NVIDIA sells the hardware for the data centers where the models are trained. They offer Omniverse where the models are taught and tested. And NVIDIA also sells the hardware that allows on-device real-time inference through NVIDIA AGX, allowing robots to have intelligent interactions with the real world even when they are not connected to a data center. Notice that NVIDIA is taking a holistic system approach to physical AI. This is a massive long-term growth opportunity that does not get enough attention. I am completely serious, and I am not exaggerating whatsoever when I say that I think NVIDIA's physical AI business may eventually be larger than their current data center business. Right now, most analysts are hyper-focused on NVIDIA's data center business and not giving adequate attention to some of NVIDIA's other business segments, such as physical AI. I continue to think that most analysts are underestimating NVIDIA's long-term growth, and I would not be surprised if we see some price target upgrades in the near future, given Jensen's GTC keynote and NVIDIA's upcoming earnings on November 19th. As a reminder, NVIDIA guided Q3 revenue at $54 billion, indicating a re-acceleration of revenue growth. As for production ramps, Blackwell Ultra is ramping very quickly right now, leading to revenue growth acceleration. Rubin is on track to launch in 2026. Then we're expecting Rubin CPX at the end of 2026. Later on, we're expecting the launch of Rubin Ultra in 2027 and Feynman after that in 2028. We have a clear data center product roadmap stretching into 2028, and Jensen believes there will be $3 to $4 trillion of global AI factory build-out between now and 2030. That means Jensen is expecting growing AI demand and an expanding total addressable market underpinning all of this. I don't think we are anywhere near any type of bubble bursting type of event. With all of this in mind, I seriously think that NVIDIA still has plenty of runway ahead of it, and I think this company will be worth substantially more in future years than it is today. At least that's my view of the situation. Remember to stay calm in this market. Remember to maintain a long-term perspective, and do not make any hasty or irrational decisions. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.